Our presenters today are Ted Wilson, SLCOO, and Andy Huang, Middleware Platform team member at Intuit. Andy originally presented this presentation at the TIBCO NOW conference in San Francisco last month to a full room, and he is gracious enough to do it again so that anybody who missed it in San Francisco will have a chance to participate. Andy, thank you so much for joining us.
So thanks, Jeff, for the introduction. Yes, I'm part of the team that's tasked with the design and implementation of middleware platform technologies here at Intuit, and I've worked with TIBCO technologies for about 10 years. Included in our tech stack is the implementation of the TIBCO EMS broker or brokers. We have about 20 instances of those brokers implemented over multiple environments and over multiple data centers. In addition to our TIBCO infrastructure, we also utilize various technologies from Oracle, MuleSoft, and Red Hat. And the TIBCO EMS is currently one of the messaging backbone for these other technologies. So my team is in charge of monitoring, capacity management, HADR, and security for the middleware platform. And we currently utilize SL's RTView product to monitor our TIBCO EMS infrastructure. The project scope for our team includes enhancing the middleware platform to support currently the service-based architecture to further expose our back office functionality to Intuit's business units and third-party partners. And the goal is ultimately to provide higher level of service and transparency to Intuit's customers. A little bit about Intuit. Intuit is a provider of multiple products, including tax preparation products such as TurboTax, and small business offerings such as QuickBooks, and financial products, consumer financial products like Quicken and Mint. All of our products have an online presence, and in most cases, the online user percentage is higher than its desktop versions, and the trend continues today across all product lines. Each product offering also have auxiliary services. So, for example, in our tax line, we have two separate products sets, one for the consumer and one for the professional. So Intuit provides quite a bit of diverse set of products to both the consumer and the professionals in those product space. Our middleware platform provides back office functionality to these Intuit product sets. The current TIBCO EMS infrastructure handles all messages and all messaging traffic for Intuit's order-related applications, as well as multiple customer experience applications. Basically, about 90% of Intuit's revenue flows through the EMS messaging platform. All these order transactions originate from electronic storefronts that we have, as well as from in-product purchases, and at some point traverses through our EMS brokers to the different back office applications. So therefore, our online order services needs 24/7 uptime. From a customer experience perspective, filing taxes is stressful enough, and we need to ensure that the experience is as smooth as possible. In addition, scalability is important to us as our growth targets are established each year, and the ability to plan growth helps avoid unnecessary costs. So our platform, including TIBCO EMS, is an important piece in the revenue capture and generation process for Intuit. And so the stability and the performance of these message brokers are pretty critical to Intuit's success. And the RTView product let us maintain this level of stability and resilience across our brokers. Oops, here we go. Excuse me. So our platform is considered a shared service environment. It is used by multiple applications across different business units. There are a couple of reasons for creating shared services environment. For example, we have a dedicated engineering team and support team for the platform. So this reduces the need for each different business units to create their own platform and avoids overlapping technologies and licensing. Due to the nature of these shared services, our team is also looked upon to form and create standards that all teams will utilize. We provide guidance to new teams looking to onboard to the platform. Therefore, we become a center of excellence for best practices, processes, and patterns for implementing various business logic. Currently, we have about 20 major applications and services utilizing the platform. Each one is counting on stability and resilience of the platform, since one incident on the platform cascades to multiple downstream into a customer's and usually affects multiple business units. Okay. So on a shared services environment, on the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see that we usually have 4 major type of applications that utilizes our platform. This includes our TIBCO EMS messaging product, our enterprise service bus, transaction logging systems, and a business activity monitoring process. Each one of these major applications actually also utilize the EMS broker for communication and message transfer, and we often refer to our messaging system as a message backbone. And we serve 4 types of customers on the platform. We have developers that develop business line applications from requirements gathered from different business units. These are the folks that create applications that interface with our messaging backbone to communicate with various other business applications. So we might have a billing application publishing billing information to our revenue management system, or we may have order systems communicating with our account management systems. Each of these development teams usually will also have a dedicated application support team. The application support team are in charge of maintaining the health and SLAs of those applications developed within those teams. So these support teams are the experts at the application, but not necessarily at the platform itself. The platform becomes a dependency of the application, and the teams are usually interested in the performance of the platform, although they're not particularly interested in how the platform operates and how it works. One other customer is the middleware team, which I'm a member of. We're in charge of engineering and enhancement and support of the platform. We're actually composed of 2 different teams within the middleware team. We have the engineering team and the operations team. And we support the business analysts indirectly. They usually look at data from a sales and marketing perspective, and those data traverses our messaging backbone to feed the business activity systems. So something about self-service monitoring, the why. Before utilizing RTView, we have administration tools that are usually command line interfaces with dedicated language structures. Right? We also have access issues because it's not practical for us to grant system-level access to all customers in order for them to run these dedicated command line interfaces. And so what happened is our customers usually contact us for any particular information that they need regarding the platform, and it could be anything. It could be anything for as small as just inquiries on queue size to as big as no access to a particular system from an application. So this is often considered an emergency, as the lack of data is usually blocking development efforts or technical decisions. And the platform team then is looked upon as a blocker for development. So as we implement RTView, we now have a graphical dashboard to show our customers. So we send links instead of data, and these links then provide constant customer feedback. And instead of them relying on the middleware platform team for information, they can go ahead and use RTView to look up the information themselves. We also have the ability to do historical trend graphs. So this allows teams that may be testing to see back in time in regards to performance or functionality of the applications. So overall, this ends up reducing the call volume and the contact volume to the middleware engineering and operations team, and ultimately frees up time for us to work on higher value tasks and projects. So let's take a look at how we use this data. So one of the customer roles is the application and service developer. These engineers care a lot about the proper functionality of their code and usually perform baseline tests of the applications. And they usually have the need to verify verify with the QA team on the completion of their product, and sometimes need to prove that certain functionalities work. So for their standpoint, how they utilize RTView, right? This screen shows what a typical developer may be looking at. They show that they might be concerned with the number of consumers or number of receivers, and sometimes on a functionality baseline test, they will look at the message in and message out to gauge their baseline performance for the application. The trend graphs allows them to see the various aspects of the application. It allows them to verify the design patterns they've utilized. For example, the screenshot shows a pattern of constant consumption of messages whenever messages are produced into the destination. Some application developers utilize polling patterns where the consumer wakes up from time to time to consume, and that will reflect differently on this chart than the current chart that shows up. Since this is a self-service dashboard, the dev team would contact the middleware team only when they have questions regarding the design of the application versus just calling us regarding statistics, right? So this allows them to ask higher level questions in regards to the design and functionality and the interaction of the applications with the platform versus low value data points such as what's the throughput rate of my application. So now the other customer is the application support teams, and they use the same information a little differently. They concentrate on the health of the application, usually after it goes live, and they also concentrate on the health of the flow of the messages related to the application. So these support teams are usually in charge of the deployment of the applications to different service nodes, different systems, and they are usually in charge of deploying these applications to multiple data centers. So if they know that a message originates from data center A but needs to go to data center B, they will usually monitor different resources on different brokers within different data centers. They are usually interested in bottlenecks on dependent systems. Since we are the dependencies for them, they are usually very interested in whether the platform becomes a bottleneck or whether it's the application that is the bottleneck, right? So they use these historical data to make correlations in error conditions when there's a system failure. So this screenshot shows what an application support team for our XI transaction logging system will be interested in, right? They're interested in their own flow for their own set of destinations across the message broker fabric. And this screenshot shows the queue statistics at a glance across 4 broker systems updated in real time. At a glance, they may notice that out of the 4 consumers attached to the 4 different brokers, 2 of them are not handling as much traffic as the other 2. Right? Now, this may be normal because they know their systems well. They know that maybe 2 of the systems are not built as big as the other 2 systems, or this may raise a red flag because they say these systems are built the same way, and somehow 2 of the systems are handling more message than the other 2. Right. These systems don't want to be an expert on the JMS platform, so they're unlikely to learn broker administration commands and unlikely to dig into the brokers themselves. But RTView allows them to see their own slice of pie in the platform, and they're able to broaden their visibility scope if they decided to do so. So having RTView allows the app team to take action independently without the involvement of the platform team, and only pull in the platform team if they suspect that there is some issue on the platform that we need to look at. And so now we come to the middleware platform team, and this is my team, right? Our primary goal is the health and stability of the platform. And this means that we're constantly checking for bottlenecks, for errant consumers and producers, and taking action when needed, right? We are the experts on the platform, and we know specific commands and command languages for the various technologies. RTView allows us to scale beyond just pure command sets and scripts. It allows us to aggregate data for different systems across different boundaries. So it provides a peace of mind for us, and it's a valuable tool for us to aggregate data from across the different systems and brokers. Right. Here's a screenshot of how the middleware platform team might utilize RTView. So this is a glance of all production brokers across different functionality layers and across different data centers, right? This heat map allows us to proactively monitor or reactively determine if there's issues within the broker system. If we receive a request for help from the application support teams, we can quickly determine if messaging layer has issues or if the issue is somewhere else. And this glance let us see very quickly on what's going on across the brokers. The criticality graph on the top right corner, right here, that's in the box, allows us to see what is critical, whether we can prioritize between different tasks, or if this is super critical that we need to react on it right away. So in this map, you can see that one of the brokers has shown red. So this means that it's very critical, and we'll probably drop everything we're doing to take a look at what's going on here. Okay. One of the cases we do use RTView quite a bit is in war rooms, right? We operate various war rooms throughout the year. They usually coincide with timeframes when we expect heavy volume traffic, such as at the end of tax season, around mid-April timeframe, when we get a lot of traffic, order traffic from folks filing taxes at the last minute, right? During this period, groups of engineers and managers from different departments throughout the company gather in one large conference room and monitor and react to alerts and incidents. And in the war room, RTView allows teams to monitor the health of their own flow in real time, right? So reduction of alerts or proactively troubleshooting an alert in these war rooms is pretty important, because most folks in the war room are typically on the edge, and the anxiety level is quite high because of the amount of traffic coming in. Reducing the number of alerts and actively chasing pending issues cuts down the noise in the war room and reduces anxiety. Having the ability to show in a graphical manner current issues or response to issues is important for management in the war room, and it's easier to convey versus just straight textual information and statistics from our systems. Right, here's an example of a screenshot that we encountered this past year in April. Right, so this screenshot shows an automatic contingency being triggered in real time as the amount of inbound traffic coming in to our transaction logging system overwhelms the capacity of our subscribers to consume in a reasonable amount of time. The automatic contingency basically shows a drainer system that's triggered to protect the platform against overload. And this shows our contingency playbook being activated. In this case, the messages are drained out to a file, to persistent file storage, for this particular destination to be republished later. Right? We can make decisions later on the scaling of these consumers or scaling of the platform. With this chart, we can provide evidence to management to say, hey, here, look, we ran into this situation, our contingency activated. If we do not want the situation to happen again next year, then we need some resources to take a look at these systems to scale them up. So this also, within the war room, this, we can bring the slide up or take a screenshot of this and explain to war room management to say, look, this is what's going on, versus, just creating a bunch of textual number information. One of the things that RTView allows us to do is it gives us visibility into message queue health while we're doing regular scheduled maintenance downstream. All right, so if a system downstream is doing maintenance, usually the message flow stops and message will buffers up in RTView or in the queues for EMS. So RTView allows us to take a look, or RTView allows the management and the application support team to look and track, and also to verify that when the downstream system comes back up, those messages are properly processed and drained out of the queues. For us, the platform team does regular hygiene audits, and this is to ensure that the systems and brokers operate within limits and evaluate any changes that need to be done to correct issues and enhance performance, right? This also ensures that all brokers are consistent in terms of configuration and there are no changes that happen due to various reasons. Perhaps there was a troubleshooting session where the debug flag was turned on or left on, and the hygiene audits will catch these. So RTView lets us do that across all brokers. So for example, in the screenshot, we can see that all brokers and their various statistics, right? So for example, one of the broker at the bottom shows that it's still running on a rather old version, and various boxes on these screenshots shows the large async DB size, which we might say we might have to compact before we, to improve performance before we go into a heavy season. So RTView reduces our efforts to basically collect these data points on each individual brokers directly. So if we don't have RTView, we basically have to run a bunch of commands across different systems with different scripts and then merge all those data sets together. So when we do hygiene audits, the RTView historical graph let us do scaling decisions, right? We have an in-house chargeback model. So as we enter the cloud hosting area, cost becomes a factor in these scaling solutions. So now we can try and make intelligent decisions on scaling for performance or scaling for redundancy or both. So here is, so when capacity planning, we usually bring up this graph and we monitor this graph throughout the year just to see, whether we are out of limits for our memory or storage and that sort of thing to allow us to justify to management how, if we need to get more funding to scale up the environment. So looking forward, basically we like to start encompassing an end-to-end view of a transaction on the platform. I mean, we have a good window into our GMS platform, but not necessarily other systems before and after GMS brokers. So our challenge now is to broaden this view into perhaps one consistent user interface, so that we're not going to different monitoring systems to look at different things and then trying to piece back everything together in our heads or in another different tool. Before I hand off to Ted, I was going to show some demos of what our system looks like. All right, so excuse my desktop. Got a bunch of stuff on it, IMs and emails and whatnot. Let me pull up. So this is so I have two RTView instances up. I have our production and I have our performance environment. At this time of the year, we have more activity in our performance environment as we're trying to gear up for our production release going into tax season. So let me start with the heat map. So one of the things I showed on the presentation was the heat map. And if we go to so this heat map is what we look on most often to verify if there's issues. So in this case, we seem to have an issue on this broker showing red. So what we do is we usually drill in and to try and determine what's going on, right? So you can see pending messages of 88,000 pending messages and other different statistics, right? We sometimes go into the EMS destinations, all queues to a server, and try and see what's going on for this particular broker. And this lets us drill in and immediately see that we have a problem on this queue, right? There's a pending message of 180,000 messages. So from this, we can go into probably the single queue summary, find that queue, and see what's going on with the server or the queue. Let's see, maybe I'm on a different queue. Yeah, so this is a test queue and it doesn't have any consumers or receivers. So this is when we can contact the team that's responsible for this queue and ask them to take a look to see what's going on. Right? Some of the other screenshots I've shown, the all servers table. Right, this is where we're seeing that table where we do our hygiene audits, and this is actually where that screenshot was taken from. As you can see, one of the brokers is on the older version and needs to be upgraded. So we have to plan for the upgrade, and some of the async sizes may be too high that we need to remediate. Want to show you a use case of something that the performance team did. So the performance team have been running some performance testing on one of the components. And this is an example of how they are able to use RTView without interaction from the platform team, right? So they've, maybe there's an email. So they will send emails out and say, hey, look, we ran our performance team, it's done, and this is our observations. And they will actually cut and paste the chart and put some pointers, and this is what we saw, 24 gigs, this is what happened to the consumer as we tested, as we put information in, it's not consuming as fast. They put that into a formal report, and they include RTView graphs on various test cases that they do. Okay, if we run a particular test case, this is what happens. If we run certain other test cases, this is what happens. And all this is to support testing of a particular consumer for that particular application. But the consumer traverses our JMS broker, so they use RTView to justify whether we need to spin up more consumers and to report back to the application team. So this is all done by the performance engineer and with very little input from the platform team.
With that, we'd like to move on to any Q&A that anybody might have. If you have any questions, I'll go ahead and turn it over to G at this point.
Well, thank you very much, Andy, and thank you, Ted. Let's get started. Our first question, roughly how many applications or servers currently use the TIBCO EMS messaging within your shared environment?
Is that a question for Andy?
Yeah, so this is Andy. So roughly how many servers or brokers? Let's see. So in production, we have approximately 30 production brokers. Total, because we run different environments, and there's pre-production environments and performance environments, I would say we probably have about 60 or 70 brokers, and that's encompassing our dev QA environments. We have a end-to-end test environment for functionality. We also have a post-production patching type environment, and then we have our perf environment, which is built to the same level as production.
Great, thank you, Andy. I do have a question for you, Ted. How does the application know which technologies and components are used by the service?
Right. So because of the time constraints, we didn't have a chance to touch on the service model, but RTView maintains a service model that essentially associates different technologies and different components with the application or service. So it's a way that you're able to, in most cases, build up an automated service model that can be built up using a number of different conventions or importing technologies from CMDBs, configuration management databases that can be used to populate the service model and to maintain it.
Great. Thank you, Ted. I do have one more question. How long did it take to implement the monitoring tool?
So when we first started the journey, I think it took about 6 months for complete implementation. And some of that is the design aspects. Some of that is requirements gathering, because we basically started out with command line interfaces. Right? We didn't have any sort of graphical utility. So some of that is figuring out what we really want to see or want to visualize. So we work with SL on that. But I think the whole journey from start, requirements gathering, to completion is about 6 months. And during this journey, folks are not particularly 100% because there's always other stuff going on. So we're constantly working with SL, but people are not 100% booked on the project.
I would add just one thing to that. Based on our experience working with a lot of other customers, is that Typically, projects using the standard monitor IDE, of course, take longer because you're building a monitoring application from the ground up. However, in the case of the standalone monitors, because those are pre-configured and pre-built, all that's required is really pointing them at a specific domain and an environment. Rollout tends to be usually just a few days for the standard monitors in most applications.
Yeah. So to add to Ted's point, I think for us, getting the requirements and trying to see what we want to visualize took a lot longer than the actual implementation. Once we know what we wanted to do, the implementation was fairly straightforward.
Oh, actually, I just got one more question. Hold on. Can RTView infer BW process to EMS queues topics from configuration, or is it manually configured within RTView?
It can be configured to do that, depending on how you've implemented your BW environment.
Okay, well, great. Thank you so much, Andy and Ted, and thank you everyone for your great questions.
So Gia, so I saw a question on Q&A, on the Q&A chat that came in about 20 minutes ago. I think somebody asked.
Yeah, I believe you had answered that, but if you'd like to add something, that'd be great. Thank you.
So I think the question was about how are these critical events reported or escalated to the support team? So for Intuit, for typical EMS, we use Hawk monitoring, which basically escalates any alerts to our IOC. However, I think RTV also has that capability to basically escalate information to our incident operations center. Right. The IOC that we have utilizes CA Spectrum technology. So what we do is we basically create an SNMP trap that alerts the IOC, and then there's escalation procedures that they look up.
Right, and if I could just add to that also, we often see that with a lot of the applications is that you want to output this information, the events and the alerts out into an incident management system or into a systems management tool like CA Unicenter or HP OpenView. So that can be done with a lot of the standard capabilities, including being able to set SNMP information as well. There's also a lot of different notifications that can be implemented if you want to email alerts or set up some kinds of events or notifications. That can be done.
Okay. Well, I think that is all of our questions. Thank you again, and thank you everyone for joining us. Again, this webcast has been recorded, and I will be emailing that out in the next few days. I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.